Today we are going to talk about unit fractions. So at your table you should notice that there are some whiteboards, and you each need to grab a whiteboard that has the back that is showing in front of you like this, a marker, and a Kleenex. So if you don't have those yet, go ahead and pause and grab them. So as you notice, we are looking at some fraction bars. So your top bar shows one whole, and the other bars show this same whole divided into different numbers of equal parts. So they're all the same size, if you notice, but each one is just divided into different equal parts. The bars are labeled halves, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, eighths, ninths, and tenths. This is to indicate how the bars are divided. So the halves are divided into twos. The thirds, there's 3 parts, and so on. The number of parts increases with each bar while the size of the parts decreases. The whole is the same for all the bars. So in simpler terms, you have your whole, which is the same. If you notice, it's all the same size. But as you start dividing into half, your pieces start to get smaller. So we started with the whole, then we go half, then we go into thirds. So even though our number 3 is bigger than 2, our pieces are getting smaller. So we want to keep looking at our fraction bars as a unit fraction, and a unit fraction means they have the top number is the numerator of 1, and then you have your denominator as whatever fraction you're talking about. So a unit fraction is always when the numerator is 1, meaning you're talking only about one piece. So we could look at our halves bar, and we have 2 pieces, 1, 2. So our bottom number represents how many total pieces we have, and we have 2 total in our whole. And then our top number would be 1 because we're talking about those pieces by themselves. So we have 1/2 and 1/2. So we can continue looking at our fraction bars, and let's go ahead and look at our fifths. So if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces, so our denominator, our bottom number, is going to be 5 for each piece by itself. So we'd have 1/5, 1/5, 1/5, 1/5, 1/5, representing one equal part of the whole, so one piece at a time. So we can build a whole, so we can get back to this by adding unit fractions together. So if we added all of these together, we'd have 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 equals 5/5. And anytime you have a number that's the same on the top as it is the bottom, that's going to equal 1 whole, because 5 divided by 5 equals 1. So you can add unit fractions to get and build a whole. So what I want you to do while you are sitting is I want you to take your marker, and I want you to just go ahead and label every single fraction bar on here with its unit fraction. So for example, your whole would just equal 1. And I want you to show me how you can add your unit fractions to equal 1. So everything should equal 1 at the end. So for your halves, you would just go ahead and show me your unit fraction. So 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1. And we'd move on to our thirds. So we have 3 pieces. So that's our denominator. And we're talking about each piece by itself, so 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. If we add them together, we'd get 3/3, which equals 1. So go ahead and continue doing all of these down to the bottom just to get some extra practice, and go ahead and pause. So the other thing we need to understand is that unit fractions can also be used to build other fractions. So I want to encourage you to try and illustrate these ideas using your fraction bar. So any fraction that is not a unit fraction can be built by adding unit fractions. So for example, let's go ahead and you can do this with me. Let's look at our fifths, and let's go ahead and circle 3 of our fifths. So right now we have 3/5 circled and showing. But this can also be expressed as 3/5 equals 3 times 1/5. Because technically you have 1/5, 1/5, 1/5. So 1/5 times 3 is going to equal 3/5. The denominator of the fraction tells the number of unit fractions in the whole. For example, for 3/5, the whole is made up of 5 unit fractions. The numerator of the fraction tells the number of unit fractions in the fraction. So we have 3/5 out of the 5. So there you go. So one last thing that this unit fractions helps you to understand is that you can add the same unit fractions together fairly easily. So let's say we had, go ahead and do this with me, you had 2/7 and then we had 3/7 over here. So we had 2/7 and 3/7. So if you had a word problem that involved adding them, you can go ahead and just, use your fraction bar, or add them together. So you'd have 2/7 plus 3/7. And remember, when you're adding fractions together, as long as your bottom number is the same, you can go ahead and add. So your denominator is going to stay the same, but 2 plus 3 is 5. So 2/7 plus 3/7 is 5/7. And you can even double check by counting your bars. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.